Today's episode is brought to you by Forvis Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Do you take time out of your busy day for some self-reflection, perhaps some self-regulation? And how well do you understand not only your own emotions and temperament, but the emotions of others in your business? Karen Gately is CEO of HR consultancy Corporate Dojo, and she says emotional intelligence is crucial for maintaining effective relationships and communication within a team. She begins by acknowledging how tough it already is for business owners.
Obviously you've got to be getting your services, out there into the world. You've got to be driving revenue. You've got to be driving profitability. And then we start to overlay that with the people part of the equation. And there's no doubt that a lot of leaders, particularly at this point in time, I'm observing are struggling. There's a lot of leaders who are feeling burnt out, who are feeling overwhelmed, experiencing a lot of stress. A lot of demand on them, there's no doubt.
Well, not only that, they need to be able to communicate well with their employees. They have to understand the emotions of their employees. And so they need to have, we've been told, good emotional intelligence. But why is that important, and what is emotional intelligence exactly?
Well, emotional intelligence, you can break it down into some key categories, if you like. It starts with our self-awareness. So that's our awareness of our own emotions. So that's how do I feel? That might seem overly simplistic, but often people find it challenging to understand what is the exact emotion that I'm feeling and why am I feeling that? I think it's a critical component of it. And then the next layer of our emotional intelligence is then being able to make some conscious, deliberate choices around our emotions, but also our actions as it relates to our emotions. So, for example, if I'm feeling frustrated, understanding where is that frustration actually coming from and how do I behave in response to that frustration? So, if we put it back into the leadership context, when we inevitably face frustrations with our team, what do we do with that? Are we able to actually dissipate it because we're self-managing and we're having effective conversations inside our own minds that help us to actually get back to a place of feeling calm and centered? Or are we actually getting really triggered by things that come along and therefore starting to become too aggressive as opposed to assertive in our communications? And then our emotional intelligence beyond our own inner world and emotions also relates to other people. So do I understand other people's emotion? Can I see that they are experiencing an emotion? Do I have some insight to where that emotion is likely coming from? And therefore, am I able to effectively influence both how that person's thinking, how they're feeling, and then in turn, how are they actually behaving? So in order for us to be an influential leader, so, whether that's coaching people or mentoring them or inspiring them, ultimately influencing them to think in ways, feel and behave in ways that are successful, again, starts with our own emotional intelligence. And then there's no doubt that that ability to influence has a massive flow-on impact to engagement and ultimately learning and performance.
Any particular examples of how high emotional intelligence can improve the team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we look at even facilitating effective collaboration across our group, one of the biggest obstacles to collaboration is people having an open mind, being able to communicate effectively with one another, being able to explore our options, being able to make good decisions together. All of that requires that people are self-managing and therefore in turn communicating effectively with one another. So, the quality of our relationships, the quality of our ability to work together and to get the best possible outcomes together is key. And then, if you think beyond just those team dynamics and abilities to work together, if we look at innovation, for example, in order for us to truly be innovative as a business, we need to actually think beyond what we know and what is certain. So our risk tolerance is going to play into what are we willing to give a go? So are we willing to step outside of our comfort zone and try new things? And again, at the heart of that is our emotional intelligence. Learning from experience is a really big one, I observe. So when things go wrong, how do we actually respond as an organisation and as a group of leaders or employees? Do we become defensive? Do we deflect and blame other people or our circumstances? Or do we truly lean into those lessons and adapt our strategies in order to move forward? And again, we can expand that out into just executing on our strategies. How well are we actually making good decisions in the moment? We don't live in a static world. Things are dynamic. Things are changing. How well we respond to change is, again, a reflection of our emotional intelligence, our capacity to have flexibility, our capacity to be resilient through challenging circumstances that we encounter, again, are all part of our emotional maturity.
Is there a way to measure emotional intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely there is. I use a tool called EQI 2.0 that looks at 15 different sub-factors of emotional intelligence. And I find that's a really powerful tool to, take it from a high-level concept down into some of the underlying factors, when the leaders that I work with have that level of awareness. So this might include things like self-regard. Low self-regard, otherwise referred to as low confidence, again, can have a huge impact on how we show up and how we lead and ultimately how we perform. But it can also include things like impulse control. And, impulse control is, I often say to leaders, if you ever had a thought, I really shouldn't say this or I really shouldn't do it, but then you've done it anyway. And, again, most can actually relate to that. And in that moment is our impulse control. So rather than just allowing the feeling to drive our actions, being able to actually maintain discipline. So that's a common one for leaders who are very big picture people and they see all these opportunities out there and they end up spreading themselves too thin. And, again, if they can master that impulse control, they're more likely to be disciplined, focused and realise their outcomes. In that particular tool, there's 15 different sub-aspects, but there are obviously other tools out there as well.
Well, a big question then, how does a boss become better at building their emotional intelligence?
I think the key is starting with self-awareness. It's actually spending time self-reflecting on what impact do I have in my relationships and in my business based on my emotional state. So just starting by observing our own inner dialogue, observing that external impact can start to give us clues. There's no doubt in my mind, in order to become more emotionally intelligent, we have to really want to do that, because it does take some emotional courage to be willing to look into the mirror of truth and really see ourselves and then be invested in that commitment. So, it can be easy just to allow our emotions to take us down a path, but, our ability to actually stop, reflect, take a breath and start to create new patterns in the way in which we think and operate is key. So, self-awareness is not something that we can just sit in isolation and get the whole picture. I also do believe that having, again, the courage and discipline to actually look at ourselves through other people's lens and to get really good feedback and then be willing to genuinely hear that feedback and take it on board is super important. So, sometimes working with a coach can make a big difference as well. Often they can hold up the mirror of truth for you. Often they can observe ways in which you are operating and therefore impacting your environment and the culture of your business. But as I say, regardless of where that feedback comes from, it starts by wanting to hear it and then being willing to actually do something with it. And then a lot of the clients I work with, we get to a place where we're identifying specific aspects of their emotional intelligence that they want to grow. And in order to do that, they've got to actually understand more about their unconscious thinking, because the majority of our thinking is unconscious. So we need to actually get that unconscious processing into the conscious mind again, so we can start to deliberately make choices and grow to become a better version of ourselves.
That was Karen Gately, CEO of Corporate Dojo. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Forvis Mazars. To find out more, visit forvismazars.com/au. That's FORVISMAZARS.com/au.